The map was never supposed to be opened. It sat in a brown envelope for 3 years, untouched, because I knew what it contained. Not directions, not locations, but every mistake I had ever tried to forget. And the day I finally unfolded it, I realized something terrifying. Every place I ran from was exactly where my life had been waiting. Story part 1, the envelope. The envelope came the day after my father's funeral. No return address, just my name, written in his handwriting. I almost threw it away, because my father and we didn't end well. We stopped talking 2 years before he died, not because of one big fight, but because of many small ones. Pride, silence. Ego, the kind of distance that grows quietly until it becomes permanent. So when I saw his handwriting, I didn't feel comfort. I felt guilt. I locked the envelope in my drawer. And for 3 years, I pretended it didn't exist. Story part 2. The life that didn't feel right. Life moved on, at least on the outside. I got a job, I made money. People said I was doing well, but inside, something felt unfinished. Like a sentence that stopped halfway. I avoided certain streets, certain conversations, certain memories. There were places in the city I refused to go. The old mechanic shop where I quit without notice. The university gate where I ignored my best friend's last call. The small hospital where I never visited my mother before she passed. Each place held a version of me I didn't want to face. So I built a life around avoidance, and it worked until it didn't. Story part 3, the night everything cracked. It was a quiet night. Power was out, the room was dark, and for some reason, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept circling back to one thing. What if I opened it? The envelope. My father's last message. I sat up, walked to the drawer, and held it in my hands. It felt heavier than it should, like it carried more than paper. I hesitated, then slowly, I opened it. Story part 4. The map inside was a folded sheet, old, slightly torn. When I opened it, I froze. It was a map, not of the whole country, not even the whole city. Just specific places, circled in red ink, and beside each circle my father had written something. Short notes, simple, but painful. First location, you left before they could forgive you. Second location, you chose pride over truth here. Third location, someone waited for you, but you never came. My hands started shaking. This wasn't just a map. This was a map of my regrets.
Story part 5, the realization. At the bottom of the map, there was one final message.
Written differently, slower, like he took his time. It said, if you ever want peace, start here. And there was a small arrow, pointing to the first location, the mechanic shop, the place I walked away from, after accusing my boss of cheating me. I never went back to confirm. I never apologized, I just left, and built a story in my head that I was right. Story part 6, the first step. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back. The shop looked smaller than I remembered. Dustier, quieter, the same old sign still hung at the front. For a moment, I almost turned back, but then I remembered the map. I walked in, and there he was. My former boss, older, slower, but still there. He looked up and immediately recognized me. There was no anger in his eyes, just surprise. I struggled to speak, but finally, I think I was wrong. Silence. Then he sighed and said something I didn't expect. I was waiting for you to say that. Story part 7, the truth. We sat down, talked, for the first time, without ego, and I learned something that changed everything. He never cheated me. There was a misunderstanding. One I never gave him the chance to explain. He even showed me records, proof. But by then, it wasn't about money anymore. It was about something deeper. The cost of leaving without listening. Before I left, I apologized. Not quickly, not casually, but fully, and for the first time in years, I felt lighter. Mid-story turning point that night, I looked at the map again. The circles didn't feel like accusations anymore. They felt like directions, not to places, but to closure, and I realized something powerful. This wasn't punishment. It was a second chance. Story part 8, the hardest place. Some places were easier than others. Apologizing to an old friend, revisiting missed opportunities. But one location I avoided for weeks, the hospital, where my mother spent her last days, where I promised to visit and never did. I told myself I was busy, but the truth was I was afraid to see her weak, afraid to feel helpless, so I stayed away. And she died before I showed up. Story part 9, Facing the Past. When I finally went, the building looked the same, but everything felt different, quiet, heavy. I didn't know what I was looking for. There was no one to apologize to, no conversation to have, just memories and regret. I sat outside and whispered something I should have said years ago. I'm sorry I wasn't there. No response, but somehow it felt heard. There was one last circle, the most unexpected one, my father's house, the place I refused to visit after our last argument, the place he died, alone. I stood at the gate for a long time, thinking about the last words we exchanged. They weren't kind, they weren't final, but they became final because of pride. I walked in. The house was empty, silent, but on the table, there was something. Another envelope. Story part 11. The last message inside was a single note, short, simple, but it broke me. It said, I made this map for you because I didn't have the courage to fix mine. I sat there, holding that paper, realizing something painful. My father had regrets too. He just didn't get the time to correct them. But he gave me something he never had, a chance. Ending, the real map. I didn't become a perfect person after that. Life didn't suddenly become easy. But something changed. I stopped running, stopped avoiding, stopped pretending. Because I understood something most people realize too late. Regret is not just pain, it's direction. Every place you avoid, every conversation you delay, every truth you ignore, they don't disappear. They wait, and sometimes they come back as a map. Not to shame you, but to guide you. Final line, slow emotional close. If you had a map of your regrets, would you open it? Or would you keep living without ever knowing where your healing begins?